Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Paul Karolyi, and here's what Denver's talking about. All right, hey listeners, good morning. We got a very interesting show for you today. Westword editor Patty Calhoun is here with me, although not technically with me. We are doing this remotely, I think for the first time ever together. But it's the first time you've been on the show since you were announced last week your intention to at least partly retire. So we're going to talk about that right now. Welcome to the show, Patty.
Well, and I'm already seeing that it's starting because you are sitting in the Westword studio while I am in Tucson with my mother.
Oh yeah, I'm taking over. Is this
I guess
discomforting for you? Do you have a plan for what's next? I think a lot of people are asking that right now.
Oh, well, I have many plans, but among them, I will be there for 3 more months as the editor. And after that, my plan is to write all the stories I haven't gotten around to for 49 years. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. So I'm just going to be writing a lot for Westword. I've got some other projects. And we're heading into our 50th, so I'm going to be working on that project.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw your announcement, I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. I think.
Well, I'm open to suggestion.
Well, the writing thing, one of the things on your list, I think it was in the Denver Post, you said you were going to work on something about Rocky Flats.
That was in the note I put up actually on Westword.com. I have been reporting on Rocky Flats since 1978, probably. And, we won a major national award in 1990 when we revealed that the grand jury had wanted to indict individuals, federal employees, for criminal violations there. And instead, the Justice Department sealed a deal and just fined Rockwell International. So no human was ever charged in connection with that. And there's a lot still going on at Rocky Flats.
I mean, I know as well as anybody. I'm kind of curious to hear what your take is on it now. But I think that big story you had in 1990, I don't think people know this, but I think I learned about a connection with that story and another news story that's been kind of an interesting curiosity in Denver the last few years. Do you remember working with the reporter Ryan Ross on that Rocky Flats piece?
His name at the time was Brian Abbas.
Interesting. And now Ryan Ross is pitching the gondola project for downtown. He's the gondola guy.
Yeah, after he left Westword, and there were family reasons why he changed his name, he became a private investigator and a very, very successful one. And over the last few years, he's been extremely interested in plans for downtown. So he's the gondola guy. He suggested several things, and he wrote a piece we ran this past weekend about the gondola.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I saw that, I'm sure you got invited as well, that he's revealing some new gondola plans. I think he's got some actual gondolas he wants to show off to people and start this conversation again.
He's got some companies that swear they can do it, so I think it's April 7th.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about Ryan. I want to talk about you.
Okay.
This has been a long career of impact in so many ways. 49 years at Westword. When you look back at that time, what's the biggest impact story? What's the thing you remember working on that has led to something in the city that we now are all living with?
I would say certainly Rocky Flats was probably our biggest get in a lot of ways, just because people don't understand, especially now in the social media days, when you can leak anything really, really fast, that doesn't mean it's been vetted, but you can get something out there. What it took to do that story on Rocky Flats, it had gone to a grand jury. Grand jurors are threatened with contempt of court and jail if they talk about what goes on behind closed doors. So to do that story, we made an agreement that we had to get over half of the grand jurors to agree on what had happened. They had to talk to us. We promised to guarantee them anonymity. But that's what it took to do that story. So there were over a dozen people willing to risk jail to talk to us about how they felt justice was denied. And this is before Trump. This is back in the days, probably we think the good old days of open, transparent government. But there was a very corrupt deal that went down.
Yeah, I mean, that was and then there was the big cleanup at Rocky Flats. And that makes me wonder what you're curious about there now. I feel like the status hasn't really changed since the cleanup 20, 25 years ago now.
Well, there hasn't. It was cleaned up to a level a little less than they originally were pushing for. It is a beautiful site if you go there. It's now a national wildlife refuge. It's
Hmm.
beautiful if you go. I think what happens is a lot of people have no idea what was ever there. If you are concerned about plutonium, you might want to think twice about whether you want to go.
Hmm.
But people need to know what was there. If you want to buy a house at Candelas, maybe you want to know what was there.
You should, and I know a few. I think you and I maybe have different perspectives on where this is at now, which we've talked about a little bit over the years, but we've never really gotten into it. And I wonder. I don't know if now is the time, but maybe we should when you write this piece that you finally have
Right
time to
now,
do it.
no,
Yeah,
now is not right for time because I haven't written that story. I plan to write again.
you got to do it, and then we can talk about it. You'll have to come back, and we should say that as well. I mean, you stepping back from some stuff at Westword, but we are still planning to have you on CityCast every couple of weeks or so.
Well, I certainly plan to be. I think what most people don't understand is that when you're running a newsroom and a business in general, it's about 90% of it could be any business. You're dealing with HR, you're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with the uniqueness of producing whatever your product is.
Right.
10% maybe is dealing with why you got into the business, which is editing and reporting stories. The rest of it is a lot of work. And when I was up at midnight sending the best of Denver to bed last Monday, I'm like, this is really the last one of these I'm going to do.
I mean, it's I know it well, but yeah, I think when people listen to something like this or they read Westword, they're like, oh yeah, someone wrote this down. But no, there was like a huge team, a huge organization,
amount of work going into it.
Tons and tons of work.
And the work when you're editing, it's a pleasure, even if it's tricky, like the Rocky Flats story, or really any story, to make sure you get it right and you're fair. But then there are all those other levels. You've heard me running by that studio on Monday with my hair on fire because we just lost a page and I have to pull a story and I have to figure out what story it's going to be. That is what I'm not going to be doing.
Yeah, I think listeners have probably heard some of that in the background of Tuesday episodes in the past, and now they know. Patty, I wonder if you just might, how does it feel? This is a big transition. People are wondering.
I can tell you it feels like nothing at the moment because I am in Tucson taking care of my 97-year-old mother.
And I'm very grateful you called.
So that's what it feels like, dealing with it, balancing obligations.
Okay, well, we're going to go to a break in a second, but I do want to comment on just one thing. I mean, Patty's here with me. So glad to have you. Normally, Bree is here on the show on Tuesdays, our host, Bree Davies. Bree is on location working on something that you either may have already just heard or you will hear in just a few minutes. But it's something interesting brewing, a follow-up on a story we covered a couple weeks ago. Hope to hear more about that soon. Also, I want to just put the call out. We are working on our annual gardening episode. It's a weird year with the weirdly warm, dry winter we had. And so we're still collecting good gardening questions. I'm calling in this our annual AMA with AMA. That's Anne-Marie Awad. Ask Anne-Marie anything about gardening. And Anne-Marie, she'll do her best to answer. 720-500-5418. That's the number. Leave a text, leave a voicemail. Anne-Marie will answer. 720-500-5418. We're going to go to one quick break right now, and then we're going to come back and get into some of that dirty, nasty politics.
This episode is brought to you by MultiPass. Did you know you can sell event tickets and memberships for your organization, business, or creative endeavor with MultiPass? And you can buy tickets to your favorite events, meet new friends, and create community on MultiPass too. Proudly based in Denver and deeply rooted in the local event and creative scene, this platform is for event hosts and event goers alike. With MultiPass, you can build vibrant communities through its unique community chat feature that unlocks post-RSVP. And this helps attendees connect and engage with each other. The platform also solves cash flow issues with same-day payouts and offers revenue-sharing tools that automatically splits ticket revenue between producers, performers, and promoters. It also features a promoter dashboard to boost attendance with built-in tools like the ability to add street teams and track performance. MultiPass, designed to help everyone in the event ecosystem win, not just the platform. Learn more at multipass.com. That's multipass.com. This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. What does comfort that carries you from morning to night feel like? This March, Cozy Earth crafts every piece with care. From soft, supportive socks for your steps through the day to breathable comforters that help you rest deeply at night. Every detail is intentional, so your everyday feels quietly elevated. Cozy Earth socks come in 4 versatile styles: calf, quarter, ankle, and no-show. And each pair is crafted with care to fit seamlessly into your routine. I feel like I wash my socks like multiple times a week so I can just keep wearing these same Cozy Earth socks. But the fact that they fit perfectly into my Uggs was like, these are the best socks that have ever existed. And let me tell you about their comforters, which are designed with naturally breathable, temperature-regulating materials that help your body settle and keep cool, calm, and gently supported throughout the night. Head to CozyEarth.com and use code CozyDenver for up to 20% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, be sure to mention you heard about Cozy Earth right here on CityCast Denver. Experience the craft behind the comfort and make every day feel intentional.
All right, we're back. Patty.
Yes.
Saturday was a big day here in Colorado. No Kings, the Denver Summit kickoff, and then where I chose to be, a musty, dusty, 100-year-old building down in Pueblo for the Democrats State Assembly. Which of the three had your eye? Which were you most interested in?
In so many ways, what I was most interested in, and again, this was from a distance because I'd had to come down to Tucson, but the women's soccer in Empower Field and what that means to so many people, especially as you were hearing Title IX issues coming up and what it meant for women when Title IX passed and you suddenly had a much stronger emphasis on athletics in schools, in high schools, in colleges, the doors it opened for women, the changes it had for women, and now the culmination we're seeing with something like the Denver Summit. The excitement, it's really extraordinary. And I think most people who didn't really live through it can't know what it was like 55 years ago when women could only be cheerleaders.
Yeah, I have to say I did get a little swept up in it. I mean, mostly it was FOMO. I had been looking forward to Saturday for like months because I've been so excited about politics this year and following the midterms. And then it turned out that state assembly was the same day as this like record-breaking crowd coming together in Empower Field for this soccer game. It looked so much fun, except for the fact that it was a 0-0 game.
Well, that was unfortunate. And that there was a lot more action there, it seemed, than at the No Kings rally, which was smaller than I think they'd originally hoped for, but still a commendable turnout and important. But the excitement and what it meant at Empower Field was really important. And of course, it leads to a story that we're all going to be following, which is what is the city going to wind up paying to build that stadium? Will it be built on time? What's going to happen?
And we will be following that for sure. So yeah, No Kings, you mentioned I just want to talk about the crowd size. I always love talking about the crowd size for these things. I think they said earlier last week, organizers were expecting 70,000 people. And I think you all in Westword reported 10,000? Who was the source for 10,000?
10,000 is what the Colorado State Patrol gave as their estimate. So the Colorado State Patrol, who's in charge of permitting at the Colorado Capitol, so all permitted events go through them, and they always issue an estimate on the crowd. Now, you can be suspicious of what they say or not. Of course, the march then went downtown. More people could have joined, but that's what they estimated was 10.
Yeah, so 10 is interesting. Apparently, last No Kings in October drew nearly 50,000 people, according to organizers. I think I saw organizers this time said 30,000. So
I think they said 30,000, and they said originally there had been some talk of 70,000, but I think that was across the state. I guess we don't need to focus on how many so much as what was the message, how did the protest go, what's the action afterwards.
Yeah, I do think it's important. I think crowd size is important. I think it's indicative of how many people are energized to go out and protest. I think it's a super
Well,
important.
you got to think 65,000 people couldn't go do that because they were at Empower Field. Did it cut
True.
into it? We don't know.
True.
You weren't there
always...
because you were in Pueblo.
Yes. So you want to talk about when it was in Pueblo? Pueblo turned out to be kind of interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, early Saturday morning, I hopped in the Prius, drove an hour and a half down Pueblo Memorial Hall. Super old, super stuffy building. Like I mentioned, this is the Democratic Party's state convention. So if you've heard us talking about the caucuses, the county assemblies over the last few weeks, this was the kind of culmination of that moment where the Democratic Party had 1,300 delegates from all across the state show up to vote for candidates that they wanted to send onto the ballot in the primaries in June. Not every candidate was there. Some candidates, like I heard Michael Bennet was spotted at the Summit game. He's running for governor. Hetal Doshi running for AG, also at the Summit game. I saw on Instagram. They gathered signatures. That's the other way to get on the ballot. But for those who went to the assembly, not all of them gathered the signatures, so they really needed to get 30% of the delegates in their races to have a chance to go before voters at the end of June for the shot to run against the Republican in the race in the fall. So kind of an important thing, but also for the party itself, it's like this was a moment to hash out issues, to talk about differences between candidates, and kind of the first time for the party this year to start cohering around some central ideas that the Democrats might actually agree about in this highly divided time. Have you ever been to one of these before, Patty? This is kind of a fun day.
I have over the years, and they can be fun. And especially right now, you've got some very contested elections. So that one looked like it was going to be great. You know, you didn't have Hickenlooper, who's got a contested election. You didn't have Bennett, but they petitioned their way onto the ballot. It is still strange and weirdly Colorado that you have two different ways to get on the ballot.
Yes.
One is petitioning, and petitioning can be expensive and or really require a lot of resources with volunteers. You've got to have a good ground game. On the other hand, you've got to have a pretty good political game to be able to get out of the assembly with 30%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the story this time, is who chose which route. So Hickenlooper and Bennett, probably the two most established, most senior Democrats in Colorado, they both chose to gather signatures, leaving their primary opponents, Phil Weiser in the governor's race and Julie Gonzalez in the Senate race, to basically clean up and define this state assembly. Their supporters showed up in the biggest force. I think they were the biggest winners of the assembly, and none of the other candidates in those races managed to clear the 30% threshold. So it's really going to be one-on-one in the governor's race and the Senate race. Hick versus Gonzalez and Weiser versus Bennett, which we kind of knew was coming. It's no surprise, but now we know it's a showdown in those big ticket races. Personally, I thought the interesting one was Attorney General, which is shaping up to be maybe a little bit nasty.
Oh, it's already been a little bit nasty. And you have some very interesting qualified candidates. And sometimes you just want to weep that you are not going to, the three challengers to Jena Griswold, who's moving over from Secretary of State because she's term limited, all three of those challengers are really interesting, strong candidates. And you're just like, only one is going to win. And it could be Griswold, too.
Mm-hmm. It could be Griswold. Yeah, those other three are David Seligman, who is the executive director of Towards Justice, kind of a activist, crusading, workers' rights kind of lawyer. Hetal Doshi, I mentioned earlier. She's like a federal antitrust lawyer under the Biden administration who's come back to Colorado. She went the signatures route, so she was not there on Saturday. And then finally, it's Michael Dougherty, the Boulder DA. So all three very solid candidates. They brought a lot of people, and it was a tense race because Doshi wasn't there. So the other three needed to get at least 30% of the vote. Now, if it splits exactly evenly among their delegates, they would all clear 30 and be fine. But if there was fluctuation, people were going to be worried. There was a real chance that any of them could be bumped off. Which sets up the juiciest, dirtiest political moment, the story of the assembly. The whispers, the conversations were all about this race because of some allegations that dropped Saturday morning, hours before the delegates made their vote. I wonder, did you see any of this, Patty? Did this get outside the building at all? Basically, I'm asking.
It did not get to me yet. But I will say just 2 days before the assembly, we had run an opinion piece by Ann Frick, a former judge, Colorado lawyer.
Oh, really?
Talking about her concerns about Jena Griswold and why she was not the candidate to vote for. And specifically, she was talking about the claim that Jena Griswold had made that she had argued before the Supreme Court, which has been thoroughly debunked by now. But also she pointed out that Jena Griswold is not a courtroom attorney. She's never really tried a case. So, and this is coming from a retired judge who's very concerned. And even though she is supporting one of the other candidates, she also cited the other two as being incredibly qualified, people who have indeed tried cases. I mean, you look at Dougherty's Doherty's story, I mean, he did the King Super Shooter in Boulder. He really has a great resume. So you've got three really interesting candidates who have walked the walk, talked the talk, and then you've got Jena, who does a lot of talking.
Yeah. And has the name. She's won the statewide elections. So she could make the case for electability. She could be someone people already know. So if the Republicans put forth someone that's maybe a little bit less MAGA, a little bit more reasonable, appeal to like the unaffiliated, more independent-leaning Coloradans, I think that would be her case. But that's big picture. So this op-ed that you mentioned, I wonder if it's connected to the rumors that got started. I wonder if there was like some central effort to kind of undercut Griswold going into this assembly, because
I'm guessing no, because here's the thing. Each candidate has their own plan on this. So there could be someone pushing it. But in this case, I really think it was just the candidate. This judge really felt I need to say this, because judges, even retired judges, do not often take sides. And she clearly felt strongly. Anne Frick, and you can find it on our site.
Clearly, we'll link to it in the show notes as well. But so here's the allegations that dropped on Saturday morning. This was this first went out in an email from a group called NMN Action Fund, which identified itself as a 501c4, aka a dark money group, some people would say. And this email included a series of allegations from a former Griswold staffer, her director of government affairs from 2019 to 2020, a guy named Reese Edwards, and then also said 6 anonymous former staffers as well, basically, who didn't want to put their names on it, but were wanted to be involved, I guess, in some way. And the allegations from Reese were abusive behavior, bullying, and feeling like they were ultimately discarded by Griswold. He talked about late night communications with the expectation that the idea, whatever Griswold called about at 11 p.m. would be acted on by the morning. Rampant use of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements in the office. And then the biggest example was perfectionism to the point of madness, he alleged. And I called Reese on Saturday. He was on vacation in Mexico. He told me he'd been talking to people about this all week, basically trying to organize this, see who else might want to go on the record. But he told a story about when he quit in October of 2020. He talked about a long delayed campaign related to like elections information for the 2020 election, and because it's the Secretary of State's office, that's one of the things she'd be responsible for. And he said that she was such a micromanager to the point that he lost it. She just kept finding errors and edits last minute that kept pushing the release date of this campaign. And it was October ahead of a November election. And he said he lost it. He yelled. It was a tirade. It was a flame out. I then talked to one of the anonymous people, the senior staffers, who was also on this. And they were like, yeah, Reese kind of went nuts that day. But he just totally lost it. And he said he couldn't execute on the things that were a part of his job because he was being second guessed and micromanaged. Now, he also had some documents, and there's one that I would share from a consultant, Heinrich, I guess is some kind of political consultant helping run communications. But he shared this document that I want to read it exactly, because this was an invoice that this company sent to the Griswold office after completion of work. So billing notice. So someone has taken a picture of their computer screen of the invoice that includes lines that say $125 for daily ongoing requests from client. The implication from Reese Edwards being that Jena Griswold has so many requests of this consultant. It was just so much of micromanagement that eventually the consultants included a line on their invoice that said, continuous ongoing client needs, including demands for screenshots at 7 p.m. because of irrational doubts about campaign having gone live, despite confirmation from Heinrich that campaign had not gone live. This is an invoice that taxpayers paid for.
I have to say, there were early reports when she was first elected that she had massive turnover in her office. And those were publicized, I think. Mm-hmm. We, in 2024, November, when there was the password snafu there, ran a story about her reign of error, different errors she'd made. And it does sound like, from what you're saying, it's the double whammy of micromanaging the wrong stuff and missing the big picture. Like, passwords are getting leaked out, or I didn't really argue before the Supreme Court. If you are really a micromanager, you better get that stuff right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely does paint a picture of how some of those things that have made headlines may have happened. I mean, according to these former staffers who, of course, the timing of this, like we should speak to their motivations because this came out hours before this vote. And they were just very open about it. Reese told me like, he doesn't think she's fit to be attorney general. He thinks it would be damaging to the state and that Colorado deserves someone better, basically. And that's why he did it. He said because he knows her and he had this experience.
Well, and of course, you look at motivations for anyone who's leaking anything to you. I mean, there always are going to be reasons why people are talking about something. Sometimes it is just because they're good citizens. Sometimes it's because they just don't like the person they're leaking information about.
Yeah.
The motivation doesn't necessarily mean the information is wrong. And that's what we have to remember. In the case of it's a National Enquirer thing, they might be being paid for the information, but that doesn't mean the information's wrong. So it's just interesting that it's no surprise it would come out now because people are paying more attention now.
Yeah.
They're not going, sometimes if you've got people leaving the office, at what point is it a news story? At what point does it hit critical mass? And I think that's probably why stories about people leaving her office flamed out after a couple of years. It just wasn't news anymore.
Yeah, it does. You do need to have something new.
With his assertion of what happened and his own flame out, it's pretty fascinating. And the 6 people, and that goes back to my Rocky Flats story. When people want to be anonymous, you've got to go for critical mass. And if 6 people with good credentials are now backed by somebody who is going named, if they're willing to talk about it, you have to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it says something like who's willing to put their name on it and who's not. Because these other staffers, and I did talk to one of them, I will call her a former senior staffer. She said she didn't want to go public because she's afraid of retribution. Jena Griswold's brother, Chris Griswold, works for a very influential political consulting group called Hilltop that I think has worked on the Hickenlooper and Bennett campaigns, the Jeff Bridges campaign. He just won at the assembly. He was very successful in the treasurer race. And so, yeah, this person was just like, I still want to have a career in politics in Colorado. Reese Edwards, after his flame out, he bought a franchise of a barbershop up in Erie. And that's what he's doing for a living now. Like, he can go public because he's not relying on his reputation in politics for his livelihood.
Well, and sometimes that's what it takes, because usually people are frightened to go public because they figure they won't get a job again, especially in that field. I think a barbershop, you're going to be okay.
I think so.
Maybe just don't give him a pair of scissors when he's in a bad mood.
Yeah. One more quote from Reese. He told me, I suggested to him about this insinuation that he might have been paid to go public. And he said, heck no. And if anyone made that insinuation, they are lying through their teeth. My integrity is not for sale. If someone did make that accusation, then it's exhibit A as to why people have been afraid to come forward.
And who would pay him? One of the other candidates?
Great question. NMN Action Fund.
And frankly, if one of the other candidates who wants to be attorney general, like the top law-abiding citizen in Colorado, is doing that, that's a story. But I am guessing no. I'm guessing this is really pushed by people who had worked for her and don't want to see her get this job.
Well, Jena says in her speech at the assembly, she said, a candidate in this race has decided that his best shot is to launch misleading attacks on me. She addressed this in the room. I also asked her to go on record 3 times in person.
Did she name the candidate?
She didn't name the candidate.
Well, saying it's a he narrows it down to 2, but...
That's true. It would just be Seligman and Doherty, who I also requested comments from. But where these allegations came from, this NMN Action Fund, like, this was quickly picked up. I mean, our friend of the show, Deep Singh Badesha, also one of these political operator types, he tweeted this, and that's kind of how it got out there, because these insider political people follow him. And I asked him, like, what do you know about this group? Where'd you find this group? Who is NMN? And he was like, 1, I'll connect you to the guy who I'm still hoping to talk to. I was supposed to talk to him this morning. I'll put a tag on this with more if I learn more. But I found their registration with the state's nonprofit database, and it stands for No More Nincompoops Action Fund. Legally. And it's registered to someone named David Blake, who I later confirmed is the same David Blake who used to work for former Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman. But NMN itself is a 501c4, which is the classification some people call a dark money group. And that means that they don't have to disclose their donors, which means we don't know who else is behind this attack on Jena Griswold.
And presumably, I mean, when there's secrets, someone will let it out at a certain point. But
Yeah.
I think it could be motivated by nothing more than not wanting to see any more nincompoops,
Yeah.
which I think is a good idea in government in general. No more nincompoops.
Yeah. I mean, Griswold, of course, also would say she's not a nincompoop, I think. I talked to her press secretary, Jack Todd. He said no HR complaints have been made against her in her time as Secretary of State. In his time working for her, which has been, I think, 3 or 4 years, there hasn't been turnover, according to him. He said that was a problem in her first few years.
And it definitely was a problem. As
Yeah.
I said, I referred to those early stories.
Yeah.
Because in general, the Secretary of State's office in Colorado, there have been a couple noticeable differences, but it has run smoothly. When you talk about the gold standard around the country, there have been really wonderful secretaries of state. I thought when Wayne Williams was the Secretary of State, Jena took it from him. He put hands across, he crossed the aisle to work with clerks, Democratic Party, Republican Party, to keep our elections safe. So it's been a very important office just in the sense that it has kept Colorado's credibility. As we went to mail-in ballots, you're not hearing about actual election fraud in Colorado. None of that has ever been upheld.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, this seems like to me, it's going to set the tone for this race. I mean, getting some of these dynamics around where the candidates stand, what kind of smears they might be planning against each other, who else might come forward, are any of these other 6 anonymous staffers going to find the conviction if they really, really believe that she shouldn't be Attorney General? Maybe we'll see them go on the record. I think this is going to be a really interesting race.
Right. And we have 3 more months in which it can be affected. And let's remember that unaffiliated voters, the majority, I think it's hit the majority now, of voters in Colorado can decide to vote in either, but only one, primary. So if unaffiliated voters made a decision to vote Democratic in the Democratic primary, they could completely change this.
Yeah. Well, Patty, I can tell that your attention is being called for right now.
You hear these
I
pings?
can hear the pings from your phone, which is totally cool. And we'll just have to talk to you later, okay? I'm going to go to one more quick break, and we're going to hear from Bree on location. Patty Calhoun, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Hey, it's Paul. It's a couple hours later after I talked to Patty. I've got just one more quick thing, a little update on that Jena Griswold stuff. I reached out to the NMN Action Fund, the 501c4, aka dark money group, ushering all these new Griswold allegations into the light. They did not have any comment on the record except for this statement, which reads, NMN Action Fund grew from several individuals, including former AG staff, lawyers in private practice, and private citizens, concerned that the state of Colorado was on a path to elect the least qualified AG in Colorado's history. These individuals thought it was essential that the public was aware of the choice between them, so they created NMN Action Fund to undertake this education process. They talked about a couple of stories that they have called local reporters' attentions toward already, and NMN Action Fund plans to continue its education efforts through the June primary. I also spoke with the person who manages NMN Action Fund. I asked who is funding the group. They told me it is public info who is the registered agent for the ad that they've run. That's David Blake, former chief deputy for Cynthia Kaufman when she was AG. This person did neglect to share the identity of their funders and just told me that we've got a bunch of different funders. They're all private individuals who share the same concern. So that's as much as we know now about NMN Action Fund. I also wanted to follow up on the allegations about the pervasive use of non-disclosure agreements to silence staffers that Reese Edwards talked about. Griswold's office told me they've only had one such agreement, one non-disparagement agreement with former Deputy Secretary of State Jenny Flanagan, who left Griswold's office early on in her term as Secretary of State. And I also don't think I ever actually gave the results of that vote. Griswold got the most votes, 41%, then Seligman with 40%, so they're both definitely on the ballot. Michael Dougherty did not get to 30%, but he also collected signatures, so he could still get on if enough of those signatures are verified. And then we got a stew going. Then it's election time, campaigning, four-way race. Who knows? I mean, if Doshi gets on. But four-way race, this is going to get good. And I'll be following it and digging in deeper, and let me know if you got any questions. Thanks.
Hey, it's Bree. I'm here with Justine Sandoval, our green chili correspondent.
Hello.
And we are sitting outside of the Corky Gonzalez Branch Denver Public Library, where there was just a press conference outside of the library. The library is actually closed today because of the holiday formerly known as César Chávez Day, now Si Se Puede Day in Denver. So there was a press conference called, Justine, I think you and I saw the same. There was a flyer on Facebook just saying there's a gathering here on Monday. And there wasn't much information about what was going to happen.
Yeah, I saw a flyer on Facebook at the end of last week, and I wasn't too sure of all the details. I just saw the headline that was like, "Our silence ends here." And it was just very vague about a press conference talking about accountability and survivors in a trauma-informed space. And so, considering the conversation that's been going on, I thought, I wanted to see what the conversation was about.
Yeah. So there were a couple speakers. Lucha Martinez de Luna, who runs the Chicano Murals Project, was here. Her father, Emmanuel Martinez, the artist, was here. Renee Chacon spoke, who's I think she's in elected office out of Commerce City.
Mm-hmm.
Or a couple other folks here from throughout Colorado. But it was just sort of a general conversation about accountability in the movement. But what I noticed right away was that it was announced that it was not going to be a time for call out. There was no names going to be named. There was no specifics. I don't know what struck you.
Yeah, well, I didn't really know what to expect because from what I saw, the rollout was kind of vague. But yeah, it was basically saying that this wasn't necessarily a space to call out, but it was a space to begin the healing process for people. And if you have any type of trauma you've experienced, you want to share it. They were trying to provide resources for people to be able to work through that healing journey.
And I think the context here was, again, the day, Si Se Puede Day, again, the fallout of the conversation and the investigation into César Chávez, but also they talked about el movimiento here, which what does that mean to you when someone says that?
So when people say el movimiento, it could just mean like the movement. But for us as Chicanos, especially in Denver, el movimiento is like very specifically the crusade for justice or the Chicano rights movement that happened here. So yeah, when we talk about el movimiento, we're talking specifically about that Chicano rights movement.
And again, Corky Gonzalez was a massive figure in that locally as well as
Mm-hmm.
nationally, which I think speaks a little bit to the location that we're at right now. Something else I just have to say I noticed was the lack of folks that I normally see at gatherings of this type. I didn't see any politicians other than Renee. I didn't see any city council members. I just, I don't know what to take from that, but it spoke loud to me that there was just not a lot of folks that I generally see related and connected and working within the current version of the movement.
Yeah, same. That was very noticeable. I did see a lot of elders that I noticed that I hadn't seen in some spaces for a very long time. So I thought that was interesting. Mostly women showed up. There were very few men at the event today, but it was a lot of women who were here, leaders.
So yeah, I guess we both saw this flyer. We wanted to come and see what was going on. We wanted to see what was said. And I think there's a lot that remains open. It seemed to me that this conversation was really about inviting folks who may have been harmed within the movement or have experienced something, to have a space to connect with people to talk about it. Again, nobody got up and spoke specifically about experiences other than, women. Some women got up and did say that they had been harmed, but again, it was very light on specifics.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. No, I think that as we move forward after the fallout, the catastrophic fallout of the César Chávez information that's been revealed, I think that this is just going to be the beginning of lots of conversations. And I think, many communities have experienced this type of situation within their own communities. And now we're at a moment where this is the Chicanos communities moment where we're going to have to address a lot of things and deal with a lot of hurt and healing within our community. But I think we can do it if we really focus and do on, what's important in having these open conversations. So yeah, this is probably the first of many, many things that are going to be happening. And I think that's good. And I think the conversation about how we move forward healing as a community is one of the most important that we're going to have in the next, decade or so.
Yeah. And we'll continue to watch this as, again, this is such an integral story to Denver and what Denver is and who Denver is. So Justine, thanks for taking a minute to talk to me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell an anonymous staffer about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at CityCast Denver, where on Saturday I was live posting to our Instagram stories from the assembly in Pueblo. I had a lot of fun talking to Julie Gonzalez, Phil Weiser, some of the big candidates, some delegates, all kinds of people, interesting conversations. If you want to see more stuff like that, definitely give us a follow at CityCast Denver. You can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And that's all. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you next time.